I never thought that a simple trip to the basement could change my health at 80. It was a cloudy March day, and the air smelled of wet earth. The silence was so profound that you could hear the old floorboards creaking underfoot. I only went down there because my wife reminded me, "You really need to sort out those boxes. After all, there are still some of your mom's things in there." The chest was heavy, covered in the stains of time, like an old apple. I opened it and began to sift through the contents. Wedding photographs, yellowing postcards, ribbons scented with lavender. And suddenly, a small envelope, carefully tucked inside the family Bible. On it, "For George, when times get tough." My fingers trembled. Inside, there was a note and a clipping from an old newspaper with a recipe. The handwriting was my grandmother's. I would recognize it among 1,000. And at the bottom there was a note. "Drink in March and November, and your heart will thank you." When you're well over 70, your body feels like an old house. It creaks, groans, and sometimes just falls silent, until suddenly the floor gives way beneath your feet. I didn't realize it right away. At first, it was just little things. It was hard to get up from the chair. My heart felt like it was racing after a cup of coffee, and my legs felt like they were made of lead. I told myself, well, age is nothing to be surprised about. Stubbornness, that's what never gets old. But at some point, I started to feel scared. It all started when I stopped going out to get the newspaper. I lived just 2 blocks from the kiosk, but getting there felt like a struggle, as if I were climbing a hill. One time, I slipped right by the front door, and my heart raced so much that I couldn't catch my breath for a minute. That was when I first thought, what if I can't make it back next time? At night, I couldn't sleep. I kept waking myself up to the sound of my heart pounding like a drum somewhere inside me. I used to be able to walk up to the second floor without losing my breath. But now I find myself stopping at every landing. It's hard to put into words, but it felt like my blood had thickened, like molasses, as if it wasn't flowing, but pressing from the inside, struggling to push through my arteries. My chest felt tight, as if someone had placed a stone in the middle of my sternum. The pressure would rise and fall. There was a ringing in my ears and flashes in front of my eyes. And in my mind, there was anxiety, and fatigue. Each day began with a sigh. I survived another night. So what now? I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. My face had turned gray, my lips were pale, and my eyes looked dull. It was as if everything inside me had burned out. The doctor at the clinic was about 30 years younger than me. He was definitely right when he talked about cholesterol, statins, and the need to keep an eye on things. But there was no life in his words. I didn't want to just get by. I wanted to breathe deeply again like I used to when I went fishing with Mike in '84, when we were so excited we almost tipped the boat over. I started to fear that I might just fade away without any pain, but also without feeling that I'm still alive. And at that moment, when everything inside me was quietly giving up, I found that envelope. Or maybe it found me. I followed the doctor's instructions diligently. I bought a box of pills with a complicated name and took them strictly on schedule. I experienced some side effects. Sometimes my stomach would be upset, and other times my head felt all fuzzy. After a month, they sent me new pills for a follow-up. They said these would be gentler. 2 months later, there was another switch. "Don't worry, we'll find the right one," they said. But I was worried. I've completely revamped my diet. I cut out butter, nearly eliminated salt, and threw away white bread. Every breakfast is now the same. Oatmeal made with water, half a banana, and a cup of green tea. I felt like I was no longer a person, but rather a lab rat receiving daily rations of food. But things didn't get any easier. My heart continued to send signals through dull pain, pressure, shortness of breath, and restless sleep. I went to see a cardiologist. We checked the blood vessels. Early stage of atherosclerosis. It's age-related. Keep your cholesterol levels in check and try not to stress. It's easy to say don't stress when it feels like someone is squeezing your chest. I even bought the supplements that the pharmacist recommended: coenzyme, Q10, fish oil, and red rice. The bottles are bright. The names sound impressive, but my body feels like it's in silence, or, to be more precise, weakness. Every morning started with a handful of capsules. My wife looked on with concern, asking if I was taking on too much. But I just wanted to feel alive again. And it's like drop by drop. It wears away your patience. At some point, I just realized, that's it. I don't believe anymore. Not in pills, not in new schemes, not in promises. I sat by the window, watching the first spring leaf fall from the tree, and I felt my spirits sink. Then I remembered that note. It had been sitting on the shelf all this time, between the family Bible and a photograph of Grandma Ellen. Suddenly I felt drawn to her, as if a voice from the past was saying, "Give it a try. Grandma Ellen." She had heavy hands and a light voice. I still remember how she would sit in the kitchen, legs tucked under her, wearing a checkered apron that smelled of dried sage and fresh bread. We were living in an old farmhouse on the outskirts of the state back then, and every spring Grandma would hold what she called a family cleansing. She would say it sternly. "Winter is deep in our blood. It needs to be purged." We never argued. She had one special jar. It's a glass container with a screw-on lid. It was stored in the lower cabinet where the vinegar usually sat. Inside was a murky infusion with a sharp smell of garlic and lemon. It made me wince, but Grandma insisted, "Drink up, George, and your heart will sing, not cry." She would pour a spoonful of the herbal brew into a cup, add warm water, sometimes honey, and I would drink it with my eyes closed. Then I would run out to play in the yard, feeling as if something warm inside was protecting me from within. Back then, I didn't understand what she was doing. Only with age did I realize. Grandma wasn't curing illnesses. She was keeping them away from us. I remember how in the winter she would rub garlic oil on my chest and put mustard plasters on me. She would make lemon water and give it to us in the mornings to keep our blood flowing. She taught me that the strongest medicine grows on the ground, not on a shelf, and I would grumble back, "Grandma, you're like a witch," and she laughed. I just remember what helped my dad. And he helped his. It's in our blood. And here I am, an old man sitting in the kitchen, remembering how I drank that beverage from his hands. On the table lies a note, yellowed with age, in his handwriting. And suddenly I realized Grandma was serious. Spring is a time for renewal. And that goes for the heart, too. I sat for a long time pondering this note. The handwriting was a bit smudged, but still legible. 3 lemons, 4 heads of garlic, a piece of fresh ginger, 2 tablespoons of honey, 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Grind everything up, pour in warm water, and let it steep overnight. Drink 50 milliliters on an empty stomach. In spring and autumn, I read it about 5 times. It felt strange, like I was having a conversation with my grandma just across time. I had lemons. I also had garlic. I had to search for ginger. At the supermarket, a young salesgirl asked if I was planning to cook something Asian. I chuckled and said, "No, I just want to remember my grandma." When I got home, I washed the ingredients, peeled the garlic, and sliced the lemon with the peel as instructed. I cut the ginger into thin slices. I put everything into the blender, added honey and oil. When I turned it on, a sharp, intense aroma filled the kitchen, as if the very air had become more invigorating. What I ended up with was a thick golden-green mixture, dotted with bits of lemon pulp. I poured the mixture into a jar and left it overnight, just as instructed. In the morning, I was hesitant, really hesitant. I looked at the jar as if it were a potion that could either save me or ruin my mood for a long time. But something in the smell reminded me of my childhood. That familiar kitchen light, a mug with a blue rim, and Grandma's words. Taste isn't the most important thing. What matters is that the blood comes alive. I poured a little into the shot glass. The color reminded me of spring soil after a rain. I took a deep breath, and I drank. It felt like a tickle in my throat, similar to a good cider. My stomach twisted a bit, but almost immediately clarity set in. Not euphoria, no. It felt as if someone had wiped the inner panes of glass. I didn't know if it would help, but at that moment I felt like I was doing something. And it wasn't just following some plan. It was from memory, from the heart. That's how my morning began, and that's how a new chapter started. The first day passed without any particular wonders. But by the evening, I noticed that I had walked to the store without stopping even once. I took my time, but I walked steadily and without any shortness of breath. When I got back, I instinctively placed my hand on my chest, and for the first time in a long while, there was neither heaviness nor dull pressure there. Just a faint, warm pulsing, like a distant echo. I thought, coincidence. On the second day, it got more interesting. In the morning, as usual, I took my dose. It burned a bit more than the first time. I had oatmeal, went outside, and suddenly felt like I could breathe easier. The air seemed deeper, cleaner. Even the smells were sharper. A blooming lilac bush by the house, fresh baked goods from the neighbor's bakery. I stood there, inhaling, unable to get enough. By the evening, I felt a light fatigue, but not the heavy, dragging kind that usually knocks me out on the couch. Just the regular, work-related tiredness. It was as if my body was reminding me, "You accomplished something today. Good job." By the third day, everything changed. Woke up without an alarm. My mind is clear, and my body feels light, like I'm 20 years old. I looked at my hands. They're steady. My blood pressure is stable. There's silence in my chest. A calm, noble silence, like an evening by the lake. But the most important thing is that I felt faith return. Not in miracles, but in myself. I believe I can take care of my body and help it. I walked around the house, made some tea, and even turned on the radio for the first time in a long while. I wasn't irritated by the noise, the light, or even my own thoughts. By the 5th day, I started waking up earlier and taking walks around the neighborhood. I noticed that my face looked fresher. My wife said, "Are you going to some treatments?" I just smiled. I wanted to mention my grandma's recipe, but I kept it to myself for a while. For the first time in many months, I started planning not just my day, but my week too. And it all started because of this little jar with lemon and garlic, along with what I once considered empty words from the past. When I began to notice the first results, I didn't just celebrate and forget about it. I wanted to understand what exactly worked. Why did such a simple combination of lemon, garlic, ginger, honey, and oil have such a powerful effect when the pills didn't help for months? I started reading. I asked my son, who is a biology professor, and he explained it to me in simple, accessible terms, just as I requested. Garlic has proven to be a real treasure. It contains allicin, a substance that dilates blood vessels, lowers bad cholesterol levels, and thins the blood. It's the viscosity of the blood and narrowed arteries that hinder normal blood flow, and garlic gently and gradually clears them out, like a pipe cleaner. What's more, it does this without chemicals and without overloading the liver. Lemon is a powerful antioxidant. The peel and juice of the lemon are rich in vitamin C and flavonoids. These substances protect the walls of blood vessels from damage, strengthen them, and also help the liver break down fats, which then do not accumulate in the arteries. My son said, they literally wash out the unnecessary from the inside. Ginger is an old friend of the heart. It improves blood microcirculation, warms you from the inside, and helps reduce inflammation in the blood vessels. Moreover, as it turns out, it helps the body cope with stress, which also impacts the heart. So it's not just for flavor. It contains enzymes, B vitamins, and minerals. It nourishes the body, supports the immune system, and provides a gentle, vibrant energy, unlike that from sugar. Most importantly, it prevents the drink from being harsh. It binds the components together, creating a balanced mix. Olive oil is a source of healthy fats. It aids in the absorption of active substances, softens the effects of lemon and garlic, and also reduces inflammation in the blood vessels while protecting them from microdamage. By the way, without fats, vitamin C is absorbed less effectively, but when combined with oil, they work together like an orchestra. When I learned all this, I even regretted not paying attention to it earlier. We live in a world where natural seems naive, but in reality it's just science without the packaging. And I thought, Grandma didn't know anything about allicin or flavonoids, but she knew what worked, and now I know too. When I realized that the recipe actually worked, I decided to write it down precisely, just like in a lab. I must admit, the first time I made it, I just eyeballed it like my grandma used to do. Now I want anyone to be able to recreate this remedy without any doubts or confusion about the measurements. Here's my exact recipe, tested not only for flavor, but also for how it makes me feel. Ingredients: 3 whole lemons, preferably organic with the skin, 4 large heads of garlic, not cloves, but whole heads, a piece of fresh ginger, about the size of your palm, around 120 grams, 2 tablespoons of natural honey, liquid, unpasteurized, 2 tablespoons of good olive oil, extra virgin, cold pressed, 1 liter of warm water, not boiling, about 113 degrees Fahrenheit. How to prepare it? Wash the lemons thoroughly and blanch them in boiling water to remove any wax coating if present. Cut them into wedges, removing the seeds but leaving the peel on, as it contains most of the beneficial properties. Peel the garlic. If the ginger is young, you can skip peeling it. Just give it a good wash with a brush. Blend lemon, garlic, ginger together until you have a paste. Add honey and olive oil and mix well once more. Transfer the mixture to a large glass jar. Pour in warm water. Cover with a lid, but not tightly, and let it steep at room temperature overnight. In the morning, strain the infusion through cheesecloth or a sieve. You can either discard the pulp or use it as a marinade for fish, as the aroma is amazing. Pour the liquid into a bottle and store it in the refrigerator. How to take it? Consume 50 milliliters, about 3 tablespoons, every morning, 20-30 minutes before meals. The course lasts for 3 weeks. After that, take a 1-week break, and you can repeat it. You can drink it cold or slightly warmed, but not hot to avoid killing the enzymes. It's best to take it on an empty stomach so your body can immediately absorb all the active ingredients. I used to drink from a small cup as a ritual. I inhaled, drank, and exhaled. And every day I would say, "Thank you, Ellen." No matter how well this brew worked for me, I want to make it clear. It's not magical and not for everyone. This product is powerful, and it needs to be handled with respect. I mean respect, not carelessly. I made a couple of mistakes at the beginning, and now I know what to avoid. The first mistake was overdoing the dosage. At first, I thought, if it helps, then let it help faster. I increased the dose to half a glass. The next day, I felt nauseous and had a heavy feeling in my stomach. Consuming large amounts of garlic and lemon is quite a challenge for your stomach lining, especially on an empty stomach. Therefore, strictly speaking, no more than 50 milliliters per day. And don't increase the amount, even if you feel the effect is weak. It builds up over time. The second mistake is drinking on an empty stomach if you have a sensitive stomach. If you have gastritis, ulcers, or just an irritated stomach, it's better to start with a teaspoon after a meal rather than before. Gradually train your body, or at least drink water to wash it down rather than swallowing it straight. Don't torture yourself. The third mistake is combining it with medications. I was taking blood thinners and didn't realize that garlic has the same effect. My doctor later confirmed that it can enhance the effect, which can be dangerous. Make sure to consult with your doctor, especially if you're on long-term medication. Just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe when combined with other treatments. Who should avoid this? People with stomach ulcers or gastritis in the acute phase. Those who are allergic to mold, citrus fruits, or garlic. Additionally, individuals taking blood thinners or anticoagulants should steer clear. One more thing. This drink does not replace medication. It helps, supports, and cleanses. But if your blood vessels are severely clogged or you have serious heart issues, it's not a magic wand. This is part of overall self-care, not a substitute for therapy. And most importantly, listen to your body. It will let you know when it feels good and when it's too much. It took me 3 days to find my perfect balance. Some people only need a teaspoon. After I started sharing this recipe with friends, I received a wave of feedback. People my age, those who have already gotten used to a daily routine of pills and restrictions, suddenly felt that they could regain some control. And the best part is that they could feel the effects not in a year, but in just a few days. The first to respond was Evelyn, an old friend of my wife, who is 76 years old. She said, "I've been taking your herbal remedy for just 5 days, and yesterday, for the first time in 6 months, I was able to wash the windows by myself. My hands weren't shaking, my breathing was steady, and believe it or not, my blood pressure was 130/80. I was even a bit surprised. I thought the blood pressure monitor was broken. Then Frank called from the Veterans Club. His voice was cheerful, as if he were 60 instead of 81. You know, George, I used to be a skeptic, but my wife insisted. Now I look forward to that moment every morning with a little drink. On the 6th day, I noticed the feeling in my fingers came back. They're no longer cold or numb. I thought it was arthritis. Turns out, the blood flow has improved. Louise, a retired nurse, wrote me a note in handwriting that I could barely read. You brought my grandma back to me, George. My grandmother used to make a drink like that and called it blood tonic. I've forgotten how it smells, how it burns the throat, like life is coming back. Thanks for the memory. I even received a letter from a young guy, the grandson of one of my acquaintances. He wrote, Grandpa has started getting up earlier. He's telling stories at dinner again. He's truly living, not just existing. Now every morning I hear him say, for Ellen, as he drinks his elixir. These stories aren't about miracles. They're about how simply returning to our roots gives us strength. The scent of lemon, garlic, and ginger fills not only the bloodstream, but also the memory. This is more than just a recipe. This is a bridge between who we were and who we can still become. Sometimes I think maybe we've made life too complicated. Medications, procedures, devices, charts, diagrams. It was all so simple in childhood. Grandma didn't say antioxidants. She said, to make your blood dance. I didn't know that garlic contains allicin, but I did know it cleanses the heart. I haven't read any studies, but I lived in tune with nature. Spring, fall, flare-ups, cleansing. Us old folks often feel like time is pushing us out, that everything new isn't meant for us. What our age has passed. But you know, I realize that what we hold on to, our memories, experiences, and simple truths, is the true wealth. Grandma's recipes are not just about food. They're about the belief that a person can help themselves. It's about the idea that the body is not an enemy if you learn to befriend it. Right now, I see young people rushing around, treating symptoms instead of addressing the root causes. Everything you need is right at your fingertips. Lemon, garlic, honey, and a little self-respect. The main thing is not to be afraid to listen to your body. It doesn't ask for much. It asks for care, time, and simplicity. I'm not against doctors. I don't deny the use of pills. But when you're old and your heart aches like an old dog at the door, you long for something familiar to be by your side, something that smells like childhood. That's what this drink has become for me. Not just a remedy, but a memory. Connecting with my grandmother, with my younger self, with a time when we believed not in formulas, but in herbs and care. And you know what? I believe again. I believe that it's still too early to give up, that the heart can be revived, that there is more strength within us than we realize. What do you think? Write to me. Maybe you have your own grandma's recipe. Or will you try mine? Just make sure to consult with your doctor first. Then listen to your heart. It will give you a hint